Well, interesting evening it is for various reasons. Well, first and foremost, to be very honest, I was kind of waiting the whole day to, arguably about 24 hours later than the game itself to do my post match review on the Supercopa España final, which we saw yesterday. My gosh, what an incredibly tense game. And just about a few hours ago, when I was about to sit down to do this, I start to read from different sources rather quickly, breaking on all channels that Xabi Alonso, not just as a consequence of the game, we'll get into that, or the match from yesterday, that Xabi Alonso is no longer the coach of Real Madrid with immediate effect and on mutual terms. So there's a lot to dissect there. But as so the football gods would have it, yeah, basically there would be no, how should I say, there would be no normal Clásico review in which one could just talk about the game. Of course, we have to also talk about the fact that Xabi Alonso has left Madrid. That is pretty, I think, probably the biggest news in the footballing world. Obviously, to be coach of Real Madrid is probably the most prestigious job that there is in world football. Even as a Barca fan, you have to say it. But if we really talk about the game, obviously, a lot of the things that I mentioned yesterday in the preview, I could kind of see a few things happening, but a lot of things I didn't see. And I think the first thing we just have to discuss about yesterday's match is really focusing on how tense it was. So I believe it was a very tense affair. And I've been talking to, a lot of the people, sort of in my circle, the people I talk to football about, many of them Real Madrid fans, a few of them Barcelona fans. But what I could really feel and what we could all feel was a rather tense, I wouldn't even say undertone to the game, I would say actual tense. The game was not only riddled with the classic intensity, but it was even tense in the sense of there was a lot of aggression, which you'd expect, of course, but more so than in the previous Clásicos. I even felt sometimes, I would say, a bit too friendly over the last couple of years. We can definitely say the game lost its spark over the last decade, but it's definitely coming back, and that obviously has to do with a lot of the institutional tension between Barcelona and Madrid right now. And that was then even more so highlighted by the very defensive setup from Xabi Alonso. So obviously we looked a bit at how they could set up. Barcelona set up exactly how we'd expect them to set up. Although instead of Ferran, we had Lewandowski. And that's a very great situation for Barcelona to have, where they can literally choose between Lewandowski or Ferran, and they will always be scoring. Their numbers are incredible, and they seem to work in a great symbiosis between them as well. There's a great understanding there. There's a lot that Ferran can learn from Lewandowski, and there's just different sides to the game that they had. Ferran is obviously much better at pressing and pressing the goalkeeper, pressing the back line of the opponents. Whereas Lewandowski is a bit more of a strategic player, knows where to get in the right situations. He's a natural goal scorer. Ferran started as a winger, but yeah, obviously it's a great situation for Barcelona because it gives them goals always, but different dimensions of the goals and how they put themselves in those situations. So that was basically the lineup that we had predicted. Joan Garcia in goal, then we had Koundé and Balde as fullbacks, and then Eric and Cubarsí as center backs. Then De Jong and Pedri. Really, I think this is the strongest they've ever played together, and they're starting to build as of January from last year when they started to play together. It's really wonderful to see how they control that. Rafinha, MVP, incredible how he's not in FIFA's the best. He's one of the top players in the world. How he galvanizes a squad, it's incredible. I think he's really, and I would say not even underrated because we all know how good he is, but definitely in the eyes of some people, I would say he's incredibly underrated. Then Lamine, and then we had Fermin, who really earned his spot, and then Lewandowski. But we were obviously Madrid then playing when it looked like on paper they're sort of keeping that formation that they've usually been playing with. It sometimes even looked like a 4-3-3, but it's very fluid, dynamic. It was very defensive in that they actually were playing with 5 defenders. So basically, in attack, obviously Valverde would go forward, and then they'd be more of the line we'd expect. But when they were defending, basically Valverde would tuck in on the right as right back. And then there was Asensio, Hausen, and Chouameni, who would come from central midfield. Obviously, on paper, looked like he was a central midfielder, but he was actually coming to be the third center back with the 2 wing backs as well. A very defensive approach, and I have to say it was working. But we're all very surprised to see just how defensive the lineup was for Real Madrid. It reminded us of the Copa del Rey final. And all those, I don't know if you remember in 2011, Barcelona and Real Madrid played, I think, 4 Clásicos in like 20 days, where it was League, Copa del Rey, Champions League, and they would put Pep in that destroyer role as a sort of central midfielder. And that's kind of how it felt yesterday with Chouameni taking that role as well. And I have to say, it really worked. Even their attackers, so for example, Gonzalo, their striker, actually tucked in as an extra midfielder, leaving Vinicius on that sort of half left, half false 9 role, where he could really also then be the one who they would send on counterattacks. And I have to say, it did work. But it was a very tense game. Barcelona had actually 76% of the possession on average, which is a very high number. It really does remind us of times past, but it was definitely a game that was controlled in the midfield by Barcelona, but there was always an element of threat from Real Madrid coming, even when they were not. Even when they were not threatening so much. Barcelona, as I mentioned, was 76% of the possession. Even when they were not in the game, you think they were just defending, they were just there to destroy. I mean, to really say it, they were playing sort of more of a destructive role instead of a creative role. But I think that really highlights what Real Madrid is missing, and that's exactly what Xabi Alonso pinpointed at the beginning of the season. They needed a deep-lying playmaker, someone like Modric, or someone who he wanted, which was Subimendi, who obviously, when they wanted him, was already too late and had gone to Arsenal. But that's really what they're missing, and Chouameni is doing an amazing job. It's just that he's more of a defensive-minded destroyer, more of a defensive-minded midfielder than perhaps Subimendi is there to open up the play. Something that, for example, right now Barcelona have really found with Frenkie and Pedri. None of them are naturally defensive-minded, but they seem to work well together, and that deep-lying playmaker role is really important. And then, of course, we started to get our first few chances, even though Real Madrid knocked on our door first. And then Rafinha had a clear-cut chance. He really rocketed it wide. We all thought that was going in. Then a few minutes later, he did get the first one. Classic drive with his left foot to the right corner. No chance for Courtois. And then basically, and that was just before, that was just close to the end of the first half, and then suddenly Real Madrid get a goal back with Vinicius. I have to say, he played incredibly. He was formidable yesterday. It was absolutely world class again. Now I don't think he had scored since October. Obviously he's been getting booed by the Real Madrid fans in the last games in the Bernabeu. I have to say, obviously I'm not neutral, but when he's on fine form and he's playing like that, incredible. He picks the ball up in a counter-attack, takes it all along the left wing, then dribbles past Koundé and Eric at the same time, and then Kobarsi tries to get it last minute, and he puts it to the left of Joan Garcia on the far corner for him on the right side. Wonderful goal, and I always knew that danger was coming. It was never safe, and that was really after a defensive first half, yet they still managed to get into those spaces, and it was more the genius or the individuality of Vinicius than really, could we say, a byproduct or the fruitful result, yielded results of Xabi Alonso's game plan, which I have to say really was defensive and really was more of how can we minimize the surface area attack of the opponent as opposed to how can we take control of the game and bring the problems to Barcelona. Because if there's one thing we've seen, even though Barcelona's defense has been fortified in the last 10 games, is that in the first part of the season, especially, our defense was shambolic. And we managed to filter it. Let's not forget the the high line that Barcelona plays is literally gold dust for players like Vinicius, Rodrigo, and Mbappe, who obviously was on the bench and played in the end. Then right after that, I was very disappointed. Obviously, I felt just deflated, very deflated to concede just before halftime, and then Pedri really just by himself with only Lewandowski in front of him picks a direct through ball straight to Lewandowski, who manages to find his space between the Real Madrid central defenders, and then quickly manages to turn the ball and chip it over Courtois. Those are simply things you can't teach. That's what Lewandowski brings for you. And it was 2-1. And then the referee gave 3 minutes extra time. And then what happened basically was that there was a corner already in the 6th minute of extra time that was far too long to have played on, but they played on, and alas, Madrid, with that, say we'd call it that gene of Madrid that they have, especially in finals, that they always show up even when they're not playing great. A goal by Gonzalo, very scruffy, but he sought for it, he looked for that goal, just like Raúl would do it. And it was a corner that couldn't be cleared by Barcelona, and then sort of half on the ground, he managed to flick it into the goal. And then it was 2-2. I think after a very, very positive first half for Barcelona and a very defensive one from Real Madrid, yet somehow it was 2-2. Second half began, and then Real Madrid started to open up a bit more, playing more to their own strengths, trying to take control of the game. It definitely was a very tense affair. I got such a headache after that. During the game and even after it, even today, I would say. And then basically it wasn't up until like the 70-something minute where Rafinha, after some solid interchange of play between Olmo, Lamine, Ferran and him in Real Madrid's box, manages to scuff a shot, somehow manages to deflect off Asensio. And it's then sort of course, wrong foots Courtois, who could do nothing about it. And it was 3-2. Again, if there was anyone who deserved that goal, it was Rafinha. And yeah, I would really say that yesterday's game was really one in the midfield battle. And I would even say that De Jong actually had an even better game than Pedri. Usually it's just Pedri who we'd say that to. And when De Jong obviously has those games where he really is on fine form, then obviously he seems to be the metronome that we usually would attribute to Pedri. They really worked well together. All in all, I would say, obviously the game ending 3-2, and again with a lot of added time, even more so that was sort of thing they played like 97 minutes, even though they should have played until the 95th. And even with 3-2, can never rest assured. And Mbappe came on, played around 10 minutes, and it was just a very tense affair, especially for Barcelona fans towards the end. And there were two clear-cut chances. One was obviously a shot straight to the palms of the hands from Carreras to Joan Garcia. Had he just gone a little bit wider, he would have scored that. It would have gone to penalties. And then even that in the minute 96, in the final kick of the game, there was a header from Tchouaméni, again straight to the keeper. He didn't have to move, and he caught it. And then, of course, the game was over. It was a really odd one. I think the build up to that game, again, it was always the impetus on Barca are definitely the team who are going to be, who are probably going to try and not only outscore Madrid by a significant amount, but also to really almost humiliate. And there was a talk of that, ironically, also from a lot of the Madrid-based press in Spain, when a lot of the Catalan media, the ones that follow Barcelona and support Barcelona, were actually saying this is a final, this is against Real Madrid, form doesn't matter, it's a one-off game that goes straight to penalties. You could almost sense that Madrid wanted it to go to penalties, whilst Barcelona stayed definitely more firm along the line, the path that they've been playing under Flick. Obviously, very high pressing, very quick to win the ball back, a lot of possession play, but very forward thinking. Flick really highlighted that he wanted us to play like Barca. I think what really fills Barca with great pride, fills all of us with great pride as Barca fans, is to see just the effect of La Masia, and how many players from La Masia really are not only on the field but also on the bench. Many also young players there as well to fill up the numbers, but also to play an integral part. So it's a really special time. I think we need to highlight here as well, Flick has played 8 finals as a head coach and as a as an assistant manager as well. And he's played 8 finals and he has won 8 finals. And if we just look at the trophies within Spain that he's been playing for, he's won 4 out of 5. Obviously, he won the league, the Spanish Cup, and the Super Cup last year, and we were 2 minutes away from reaching the Champions League final. So that was the one that got away last year. And this year already he's won the Super Cup. So still the Cup, the Spanish Cup, the League, and the Champions League to play for. But incredible numbers for a flick that really took over Barcelona, that was not only wounded but really was directionless at a very difficult time for Barcelona. So obviously great time for Barcelona, and obviously now we come into the other part, which is the other breaking story, which is somehow I thought I could connect both topics in one, because I think that you can do the post-match review and then also understand a bit more as to why Xabi was let go. There was always that, so obviously the news broke out at around 4 p.m. today was the meeting between Xabi and the directors and presidents of Madrid, and then about 6 something the news came out. It kind of felt like the arrival of this news was in the offing. It had become really uncomfortable for Xabi Alonso, for Real Madrid. They actually started the season incredibly well. If we just look at the league season that started in August, they won their first 8 games. Was actually Barca was really struggling. To call it the shit October, because actually in 2024 we had the shit November, and then after that we went on to win everything. It's kind of a phrase that's been coined, and it was actually really could see how they were buying into it. He had come in and promised we're going to play a Real Madrid football. It means he wanted to play a rock and roll football, high pressing, lots of goals, very attractive football. And you felt that never really happened. So he identified very early on that that Real Madrid does not have a deep lying playmaker such as Subimendi, or a central defensive midfielder who can really open up the game, and really connect the defensive parts, the first third of the pitch to the last part of the pitch. Someone exactly like Subimendi would have been perfect. He didn't get him, and actually they went on to sign Carreras as left back, Hausen, Trent, and Masantuono. None of those really the players that of course you might need, but not the ones that they really expected. And of course he then kind of had to take on similar situation that Ancelotti had, where you really wonder, how is the setup of the squad? Is it right? Are they perhaps missing integral players? Because as great and excellent as Tchouaméni and Camavinga are they really the players who are going to dictate the play forwards? As mentioned, Tchouaméni is more of a defensive midfielder that's not really known for opening the play, but he's really been playing well since the turn of in the last 6 months. But he's not the player that they need on that scope. He actually plays a lot of the time as central defense, because Madrid has a lot of injuries as well. That's something that Alonso has had to deal with. And then we also look at Camavinga, who sometimes even plays out on the right. Sometimes he's playing as a left back, and he's also not the kind of player who's going to open up, to break that line between the midfield and defense of the other team, the way that Modric would do it, let alone Kroos, right? So basically Real Madrid has gone from Casemiro, Kroos and Modric, you could argue the greatest midfield trio in footballing history. These guys have more Champions League than most of the other teams, have individually as a club. So it's a fascinating number, so we have to admit that. But Madrid has not been able to plug that hole adequately. And there seems to have already been some friction there, from what I've read and from what I understood. Obviously, I follow a lot of Real Madrid as well. But then another really sore topic was that a lot of the higher ups, a lot of the upper echelons of Real Madrid were not really understanding or in support of how the physical preparation of the players, the fitness side of the game for Madrid, how that had been going. Basically, when Xabi Alonso came, he had a demand that said, I want to bring my team of physios, my team of fitness people, my analysts. And actually, if we know Real Madrid actually have a really how should I say, they have a guy called Pintus, who was the guy he was sort of the physical architect of all of the Champions Leagues that they won, under Ancelotti and under Zidane. And he's somebody who still has a role within the club, but he's somebody who Xabi Alonso says he would rather have worked with his own people. And I honestly have to say that it's been a while since I've seen Madrid struggle so much physically. Usually those are concerns that Barca has. The physical preparation has frequently been a topic for Barcelona. For example, especially I would really argue the years 2014 till around 2022, the physical preparation of Barcelona really was a topic. Now with Julio Tous and other people and Flick's, tougher regime, it seems to be, like the shoe is on the other foot, but it's very interesting to see. And obviously when Real Madrid started getting their first defeats this season, I remember the first big one was a 5-2 loss against Atletico Madrid. It sort of started to show, okay, how is Xabi Alonso going to play, against the bigger teams? And there was a loss against Man City not so long ago. And then there was that basically at the turn of the Clásico, after the Clásico, I think they were 5 points ahead, they were 5 or 7 points ahead of Barcelona after the Clásico on October 26th. After that, Barca went on a basically 9-game winning run, or a 7 or 8 winning game, basically a run of winning games. I told you I have a headache from the game. And obviously this setup, we like to put the, how should I say, big budget, look at it here, even have a cactus here. Why not? I think that it's kind of, adds to the theme. We're just here to talk football anyway, right? So I guess it shouldn't matter how it looks. But basically it was interesting. After that, Barcelona went on to win all those games. The Camp Nou reopened. Yes, Barcelona had that disappointing loss at Stamford Bridge, but even then Hansi Flick said, I like how we are training. You will start to see a Barca that wins, and like that. And we've now, I think, 11 games we've won on the bounce since then. And the last, before this final, we had like 5 games where we played to 0. And it was interesting how then we caught up to Madrid, so much so that we're now 5 points ahead of them in the league. After they won the Clásico, we started to win, and they started to get a lot of draws. They drew at Elche. Then they had those games especially where they lost to Celta Vigo. I really think that could have actually been really the beginning of the end. The loss at home to Celta Vigo, I remember watching that game. Viljot Svedberg, Swedish striker, manages to dribble Courtois in the last minute to make it 2-0 in the Bernabeu. And then the games after, there was just no cohesion. There was no, symbiosis between the fans and the team, and you could really feel that Xabi Alonso, perhaps his days were numbered, but they were always saying the Supercopa will decide his future. The thing is that that was sort of being said, about a month ago. The thing is, then Madrid went on a 5-game winning run just to paper over the cracks, and then they beat in the semi-final Atletico Madrid. So it was a massive PR victory as well for Xabi Alonso, to sort of get them on track, to buy himself more time. And he was playing every game to buy himself more time. And that's a very difficult situation for a manager. And ultimately what happened was that the loss yesterday was perhaps the final straw. And that's basically what happened. Many people are surprised, from what I've read, from what I understand, that this didn't happen sooner, perhaps. Why let him go now? Why not perhaps after the Celta game or during the festive period where they get 2 weeks off in Spain? Now Arbeloa is going to take charge. Arbeloa, whose managerial experience, he's basically been coaching the youth teams of Real Madrid since 2020. Obviously a very astute right back, gave Barcelona a lot of hard times, a disciple of Mourinho, as they like to call him, with a lot of experience in England as well, and then with Liverpool and with Real Madrid. His youth teams in Madrid have really played great football as well. He's also somebody who speaks his mind a lot more. I think Xabi Alonso was perhaps also sadly too diplomatic for the Madrid fans. Also, his friendship with Guardiola was something that didn't appease many people in his parts of the world, and I can kind of understand that as well. Arbeloa is already someone who, even as a coach of of the second Real Madrid team, or as they like to call it, of Castilla, and then the filial, which is basically the youth teams that they have. He spoke out a lot about Barcelona, about the referee situations, even when it wasn't really something he was involved in. I think that's something that's going to appease to the masses, and he's definitely somebody who, well, similarly to what's going on at Manchester United right now, through Fletcher, perhaps Carrick, who's coming now after letting go of the manager. He's just somebody that the fans will get behind, somebody who can probably steady the ship now, obviously in this very weathered times, and perhaps somebody who might even get his ticket to get the gig long term. I'm not sure how long his contract is for now. Maybe it's till the end of the season. But he's definitely somebody who's going to galvanize the players, I can imagine. And as I said, he does play an attacking, an attractive brand of football. But of course, so did Xabi Alonso, and he obviously, was the one who knocked Bayern off their perch in Germany. So it'll be interesting to see. I think it's basically a concoction of reasons that led to this, but there just seems to be that belief that Xabi Alonso could no longer connect with the players, and there were really a lot of obvious situations of actually the players not even listening to him. Yesterday there was that moment very clear where Xabi Alonso was kind of signaling, hey, let's do the guard of honor, let's stay while Barcelona collects their medals, and then Mbappe was actually saying, let's go to the changing room, even after having seen that Xabi Alonso was saying that. So it's a very interesting thing. And then of course the whole Vinicius saga, or the Vini saga, and that actually all started in the last Clásico on October 26th. And I kind of felt back then, yes, Madrid won. Barcelona had a lot of injuries that game. It was a very tight game. It kind of felt like it wasn't the end of the world to lose that one. Just like we have to say that in yesterday's game, Barca had basically their whole squad bar, Gavi. And Real Madrid had a lot of injuries. That was a real makeshift team, a real makeshift defense. But you could kind of see that perhaps he lost the dressing room, and that's very interesting. Is that something we saw with Chelsea, perhaps with Maresca? Is that something that we saw with Amorim in Manchester United? It seems to be a very interesting time for managers. And when we discuss, I know in England, it's a big topic right now. Are you a manager? Are you the head coach? I think Xabi Alonso was very much the head coach. He also brought a massive entourage of analysts, physios, and people around him. And it just seems like, unfortunately, that fairy tale return to Real Madrid didn't go as planned. Although if there's one thing we know from Real Madrid is obviously, usually when they let someone go and the next person comes, they tend to do pretty well. However, what's interesting in this case is, if we look back the last decade and a bit more, usually what would happen is they would have a coach, it wouldn't work out, they would let them go around, mid-season, October, November, December, January, and then either Ancelotti would come or Zidane would come, and those are basically guaranteed Champions Leagues, and that's one of the greatest periods. I think they've won 6 out of the last 10 Champions Leagues, or a statistic like that. Don't quote me on that, but it is rather incredible. So it'll be interesting to see, where it goes from here. This story is just developing. It's just breaking over the last hour, but we'll definitely be following it a bit more. And for Barcelona, what will be very interesting now, obviously, there's as we like to call them, a trick game, one where they're perhaps expected to be favorites in the cup because it's against a second division team. Racing Santander, a classic, staple of the first division and of Spanish football history, a great team, really old school stadium, wonderful place. I've actually been to the stadium. It's not during game, but wonderful city as well, Santander. And they're first in the second division, and they have them next. It'll be very interesting to see how they do that. But Barcelona, there is this sort of unwritten rule that has sort of existed in Spain over the last 4 years. The one who wins the Supercup is the one who goes on to win the league and hopefully even more. But if there's one thing Barca can't do is get too sure of themselves or get arrogant or cocky in any way. Keep following this plan. And I think Flick is great at that. He doesn't let the players rest on their laurels. And he most definitely is not somebody who's now going to be, applauding them and pampering them. Give them, a moment to celebrate this, and then to basically, face now the season, the rest of the games ahead. But wonderful moment. Really, really happy that it could materialize. And I would just like to end on the note of seeing Araujo, seeing Araujo lift that trophy after his mental health struggles. Firstly, so proud that Barca stood behind him, their captain, gave him all the time he needed. Not, didn't even flinch one moment on this topic, 1 inch. It's incredible. Give the person the backing, mental health, very important to see him lift the trophy, to come back, even get some minutes. It was incredible. So yeah, I'm probably forgetting some topics or things that I wanted to digress. But yeah, I look forward to see everybody in the following episodes, and yeah, I look forward to hear from you as well. So please do leave me your comments or try to get in touch. Thank you.